It's great to play a woman in a film like this who would seem like the archetypal princess character, but actually has a lot of guts and strength and is a fighter.
Sweet.
I came here for 3 weeks before we started shooting, working with the stunt guys and working on a choreographed fight and also just working on the basic moves. In the end, when we were shooting it on set, Peter said to me, it doesn't look really like you're slashing him there. I think you'll really have to hit him. So he had me full on hitting everybody.
Just remember, pain is temporary, film is forever.
Eowyn is one of the most unique characters in The Lord of the Rings. Not only is she one of the only women in the story, but of all the women, Eowyn by far has the most time on the page and on screen. Her story is one of depression, perseverance, and ultimately triumph in the face of darkness. And much like the rest of the cast in Peter Jackson's film adaptation of Tolkien's epic, the actress behind this character was nothing less than perfect for the role. Miranda Otto went from a local star in Australia to the face of one of the bravest women in Middle-earth, from indie productions to a multi-hundred-million-dollar franchise on the precipice of cinematic history. And unlike the rest of the cast who were there for a year and a half from start to finish, Miranda Otto and some of the other characters who came in The Two Towers arrived a little later, having to integrate themselves into Peter Jackson's Middle-earth machine. So in today's video, we're going to dive into Miranda Otto's incredible true story of her life before, during, and after The Lord of the Rings. My name is Gibby, and welcome to Factor Fantasy, a channel where we discuss all things Lord of the Rings and Tolkien. This is episode 10 in my Becoming series, where I take you through the stories behind how your favorite actors became your favorite characters in The Lord of the Rings. If you haven't yet, be sure to check out all of the other episodes using the playlist on my channel after you're done watching today's video, of course. And speaking of which, let's get back to the topic at hand. Sit back, grab a pint or some Old Toby, and enjoy this deep dive into Miranda Otto's incredible journey to becoming Eowyn. To truly understand how massive of a leap Miranda Otto took when stepping onto the sweeping plains of Middle-earth, we first have to look at exactly where she came from. Because unlike the sprawling, explosive nature of blockbuster filmmaking, Miranda's roots were planted in quiet, deeply intimate, character-driven drama. Born in Brisbane in 1967, Miranda was practically destined to be in the performing arts. She is the daughter of prominent Australian stage and film actor Barry Otto. Even though her parents separated when she was young, she spent her weekends and holidays with her father in Sydney, completely immersed in his theatrical world. While most kids were out riding bikes, Miranda and her friends were writing amateur scripts, composing original songs, and designing detailed costumes. She wasn't just watching theater, she was learning how to build a narrative from the ground up. But surprisingly, acting wasn't her first choice. Miranda possessed a deep passion for classical ballet. She had the physical endurance and spatial awareness needed for it, traits that would eventually become vital for wielding a broadsword on a film set, by the way, but her dancing dreams were permanently cut short when she was diagnosed with moderate scoliosis in her spine. This physical limitation forced her to abandon ballet entirely. She briefly considered a hard pivot into the medical field, but the gravitational pull of the stage was just too strong to resist. Knowing that she needed formal training to survive in the industry, she enrolled in the National Institute of Dramatic Art in Sydney. This is a highly prestigious acting school known for churning out some of Australia's most formidable talents, and it was here that Miranda developed a reputation for a relentless, almost punishing work ethic. She had a perfectionist tendency to agonize over every single psychological nuance and historical context of her characters until she had mastered the role to her own exhausting standards. When she graduated in 1990, she stepped into the Australian independent film scene, seeking out roles that required heavy emotional lifting. Throughout the 90s, she built an incredible resume of critically acclaimed independent films. She became known for her ability to portray vulnerable, isolated women navigating complex internal struggles. But the indie film industry is famously volatile. In 1995, despite all of her critical acclaim, Miranda hit a wall. After failing to secure several roles that she had auditioned for, she experienced a severe crisis of confidence. Feeling completely defeated and doubting whether she even had a future in acting, she packed up, retreated to her family home in Newcastle, and essentially quit the industry for nearly a year. She spent her days entirely removed from the spotlight, occupying her time by painting her mother's house. It was a quiet, isolating period of her life, a feeling of being caged away from her true potential that directly mirrored the exact struggles Eowyn would face in the Golden Hall of Edoras. Fortunately, an offer to star in another successful independent feature eventually coaxed her out of her self-imposed exile. This decision didn't just save her acting career, it set the stage for an international crossover that would put her directly in the sights of Hollywood and eventually Peter Jackson. By the late 90s, Miranda's reputation for highly cerebral, emotional performances started catching the eye of international casting directors, but breaking into the Hollywood studio system was incredibly frustrating. In fact, she had a massive near miss with the 1999 comedy hit Being John Malkovich. She desperately wanted the lead female role and delivered a phenomenal audition that genuinely impressed the filmmakers. However, in a classic Hollywood move, she ultimately lost the part to Cameron Diaz, simply because Diaz had higher box office star power at that time. While this was a devastating blow, it wasn't a total loss. Writer Charlie Kaufman remembered her unique comedic timing and personally arranged for her to be cast in his next film, Human Nature, giving her a crucial foothold in international cinema. Meanwhile, across the sea, Peter Jackson was facing a monumental casting hurdle. The role of Eowyn was proving incredibly difficult to fill. Originally, Jackson had personally offered the pivotal role to Alison Doody, an Irish actress, best known for her work in Indiana Jones and The Last Crusade. However, Doody had recently become pregnant and realized that committing to an 18-month highly physical location shoot in New Zealand with a newborn baby was a logistical impossibility. So she stepped away, leaving a sudden, glaring vacancy in the production. With the cameras already rolling in New Zealand, the casting call urgently reached Australia. The way Miranda received the audition materials was completely chaotic. She was handed scripts that were printed back to front with incorrectly numbered covers, causing immediate confusion about the story. Worse still, she was given only a couple of days to prepare, leaving her zero time to actually read Tolkien's sprawling books before the recording. Because Jackson was heavily embedded in principal photography, he couldn't be there in person, so Miranda had to record a solitary audition tape in Australia with no directorial feedback. To make things even weirder, the casting directors requested that she perform the dialogue twice, once with an American accent and once with an English accent. Despite the complete lack of preparation time, the confusing scripts, and the strange dialect requests, her intense training kicked in. She managed to project both immense sorrow and fierce resolve directly through that camera lens. Upon receiving the tape, Peter Jackson watched the performance and cast her almost immediately, convinced that she possessed the exact duality required for the character. And ironically, Miranda accepted the role with virtually no comprehension of the behemoth that she was joining. Of course, it was known that Peter Jackson was making a film in New Zealand, but when she got the call initially with her agent, she was a little hesitant on if she should do it or not. But thankfully, due to a push from her agent telling her that this was going to be a massive hit, she went forward with the production. However, she had no idea that she was about to step onto the largest, most logistically complex film set in the history of cinema. When Miranda finally touched down in New Zealand, the culture shock was staggering. She had transitioned from quiet, intimate casts to a sprawling military-style operation, complete with thousands of extras and massive practical armories. Recognizing the mammoth task ahead of her, she arrived 3 weeks before her scheduled scenes, simply to immerse herself in rigorous sword training and learn the physical choreography of her character. During this prep period, the character of Eowyn was still finding her cinematic footing. In early scripts, the writers had attempted to manufacture a direct rivalry between Eowyn and Arwen, even writing the elven princess into the Battle of Helm's Deep. In fact, they even filmed scenes of Arwen in Helm's Deep. Now, this video isn't about Liv Tyler and Arwen, but let's just say it would have been really crazy if we would have had an Eowyn and Arwen showdown at the Battle of the Hornburg. Thankfully, the production scrapped that idea to move closer to the source material. They also made the critical decision to abandon the Durnhelm disguise from the books. Knowing that a cinematic audience would instantly recognize Miranda on a massive theater screen, the filmmakers instead shifted the narrative focus to the emotional bond between her and Mary, highlighting their shared struggle as overlooked outcasts. With the character grounded, Miranda stepped onto the set of Edoras, and the reality of the production truly set in. The iconic Golden Hall wasn't a green screen studio, it was a fully functioning structure built atop Mount Sunday in the remote New Zealand Alps. That's right, this wasn't a backdrop. They actually built all of this in New Zealand. The gale force winds whipping her hair and the Rohan flag during her breathtaking introduction were 100% real. In fact, the winds were blowing at a blistering 80 knots. This visceral, practical environment demanded an unwavering level of concentration, something that Miranda had mastered during her theatrical training. While filming her deeply uncomfortable scene beside Grima Wormtongue, the crew was positioned under a tin roof. Between the natural wind and the airplanes flying directly overhead, the noise was deafening. Yet Miranda was so intensely locked into the scene that she didn't even notice the chaos, leaving her co-star, Brad Dourif, completely astounded by her focus. Her adaptability was tested again during the emotional funeral of Theodred. Originally, this scene was just meant to feature the women of Rohan wailing in grief, but the night before filming, the writers handed her a set of freshly translated Old English lyrics. With virtually no time to prepare, she arrived on set and chanted the words rhythmically for the camera. And by the way, this was a pretty common practice. Almost all of the actors have said in different interviews that they would a lot of times get rewrites for their lines the day before or the morning of their shoot. But thankfully, we had an amazing cast and an amazing crew to pivot when necessary. And in this case, the musical team later took that exact spoken rhythm and composed a unique haunting melody around it. And that's how we get Theodred's dirge in the movie. But she didn't just want to sing and stare out over the plains. She wanted to fight. Miranda fully embraced the physical scale of Middle-earth, constantly pestering Peter Jackson and the stunt coordinators to let her execute as much of her own horseback riding and swordplay as safely possible. In fact, something a lot of Lord of the Rings fans don't know is that they actually shot a scene with her inside of the glittering caves at Helm's Deep, fighting off the Uruk-hai as they came in and tried to attack the innocent civilians. She spent a massive amount of time undergoing specific training and choreographed scenes just to have that scene unfortunately cut from the final film. That's something that hopefully will be included later on in the 50-hour director's cut. But anyway, her dedication also extended to the quieter, more comedic moments of the grueling march to Helm's Deep. The famous extended edition scene where she serves Aragorn a revolting bowl of stew is a fan favorite. To ensure Viggo Mortensen's disgusted reaction was genuine, the prop team intentionally made the food look horrifying, even adding bits of red cotton to the meat to simulate stringy veins. And as a funny side note about the horses, Miranda's equine co-star had its own dramatic journey. Her horse was originally purchased for Viggo, but he requested a stallion instead. The gelding was sold to a private owner, but when the production needed to borrow the horse back for later pickup shots, the new owner had fed it so well that the animal returned to set twice its original size. However, the comedy of the set vanished when the production moved to the Battle of the Pelennor Fields. The combat sequences were physically devastating for Miranda. The legendary fight against the Witch King was so exhausting that they actually had to shoot it twice, taking Miranda days to recover. To capture the practical effect of her shield shattering under the villain's morning star, the prop department hid a small explosive charge inside the shield, detonating it on impact while she still held it. The dramatic aftermath of the battle was just as agonizing as well. During the emotional scene where Eomer discovers her unconscious body, actor Karl Urban was clad in heavy, rigid armor. Urban's portrayal of sudden catastrophic grief was so intense that he pulled Miranda aggressively against his chest. The sharp metal edges of his armor dug deeply into her skin, but refusing to ruin his heartbreaking take, she silently suffered through the pain. She walked away from the scene with her legs and torso covered in massive black bruises because of it, but hey, we got a great scene, and as Peter Jackson says, pain is temporary, but film is forever. By the time she finished filming, she had earned the utmost respect of the entire production. She had arrived in New Zealand as a quiet indie darling, but she fought in the muddy trenches like a veteran warrior. When she finally wrapped her scenes, she left having forged a lasting, unbreakable bond with the stunt department, the very guys that she had personally sparred and bled with for months. It was the ultimate proof of her relentless grit, and that undeniable toughness is exactly what she took with her into the next phase of her career. Following the sweeping success of the trilogy, Miranda utilized her elevated international profile to pivot directly into prestige television. She delivered a masterful performance as the Berlin station chief in the acclaimed 5th season of Homeland, and later she starred as the formidable former head of the CTU in 24 Legacy. She proved that she had incredible stamina required for long-form, demanding productions, holding her own in narratives traditionally dominated by male protagonists. But the cultural footprint of Eowyn remained inescapable, and eventually she was called back to the mark. In 2022, more than 2 decades after she had first stepped onto the wind-battered plains of Mount Sunday, she was invited to return to the franchise. Director Kenji Kamiyama and producer Philippa Boyens were mounting an ambitious anime feature, The Lord of the Rings: The War of the Rohirrim, centered on the bloody ancestral history of King Helm Hammerhand. They needed Miranda to serve as the film's narrator, framing the story as an older Eowyn recounting the history of her people. She eagerly accepted the role, but the process of resurrecting the Shield Maiden proved to be far more physically difficult than anyone anticipated. The initial voice recording sessions took place in 2022 while she was residing in LA. Complicating matters significantly, Miranda had recently contracted COVID, which left her vocal cords inflamed and her voice sounding husky and unusually deep. Assuming the producers would appreciate a more weathered, gravelly tone for an older narrator who had survived a war, she submitted the recordings. However, the production team adamantly rejected it. They didn't want a gritty variation. They specifically demanded the exact crystalline vocal cadence that she had utilized 20 years prior. Realizing the magnitude of the task, she traveled back to Wellington, New Zealand to record in person at Park Road Post Studios. She meticulously reconstructed a voice that she had not used in 2 decades. She reunited with her dialect coach and utilized old audio cues to rebuild her specific English and Irish dialect blend. The effort to sustain the exact pitch alongside the emotional demands of the script took a severe toll on her. On the very last day of her recording sessions, she pushed her vocal cords to their limit. By the time the final take concluded, she had completely lost her voice. When the audio engineers asked if she could perform one additional safety take, she had to communicate purely through physical gestures, utterly unable to produce a single sound. This final vocal sacrifice serves as a beautiful, cyclical mirror to her original tenure in Middle-earth. Just as she had offered her body to the physical bruises and exhaustion of the practical battlefields in the early 2000s, Miranda Otto offered the last remnants of her voice to the audio booths of Wellington 20 years later. She arrived in New Zealand years ago as Australia's darling, and left as a true Shield Maiden. She conquered the physical and mental demands of the most epic film production in history, cementing an unparalleled dedication to one of modern cinema's most enduring heroes. So, what do you think of Miranda's incredible journey to Middle-earth? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. I want to give a massive shout out to Joshua, Timothy, RoboSteve, Drix, Maha, and the rest of my incredible Patreon and YouTube members who help make these videos possible. As always, don't forget that you are appreciated, you matter, and Jesus loves you. I'll see you in the next video.